Welcome to Books to Awaken Your Soul. This is a 20-minute power summary of Yoga Vasistha, one of the most influential Hindu scriptures on spirituality and God. The Yoga Vasistha commences with a profound dialogue between the sage Vasistha and Lord Rama. The very first part, titled On Dispassion, unveils Rama's deep existential crisis. Unlike the conventional image of Rama as an embodiment of righteous action, here we see him grappling with questions that plague every seeker of truth. He is troubled, not by external threats or personal dilemmas, but by the fundamental nature of existence. Rama's discourse is not a complaint against a cruel destiny, but a penetrating analysis of the human condition. He observes the fleeting nature of youth, likening the duration of a human lifespan to a water droplet on a leaf, quickly swept away by the wind of time. The pursuit of wealth, he recognizes, is a futile endeavor. Wealth, he argues, is fleeting and fickle, bestowing worries upon its possessor, fueling insatiable desires, and corrupting even the noblest of hearts. It is mercilessly cut down by time-death, making its pursuit a tragic dance with impermanence. He further contemplates the inevitability of old age and death. He doesn't shy away from the harsh realities of physical decline, the vulnerability of the body to disease, and the ungrateful nature of the body which ultimately abandons the soul it housed and protected. He laments the human tendency to cling to this impermanent vessel, bewitched by the wine of ignorance and lost in the pursuit of wealth and power, oblivious to the ultimate end that awaits all. The relentless force of time, the greatest magician, full of deceptive tricks, particularly disturbs him. He sees it as an inexorable force that wears everything out, creating and destroying universes with playful ease. He contemplates its paradoxical nature, how it manifests in the divisions of years, ages, and epochs, yet hides its essential nature, leaving humans at its mercy. Even the gods, he observes, are subject to its relentless march, making all achievements and glories ultimately meaningless. This deep understanding of the world's impermanent nature gives rise to a profound dispassion in Rama. He recognizes the futility of seeking lasting happiness in transient phenomena, seeing worldly enjoyments as delusion, like the lunatic's enjoyment of the taste of fruits reflected in a mirror. He sees the rat of time gnawing at the lifespan, the termite of disease eating away at the body's vitality, and death lurking like a cat ready to pounce on its unsuspecting prey. However, Rama's dispassion is not a passive resignation but an active yearning for liberation. He recognizes the suffering caused by craving, comparing it to a dreadful goblin that drives one astray, binds one to the fleeting pleasures of the world, and prevents one from experiencing true joy. He understands the role of egotism, how it eclipses self-control, destroys virtue and dissipates equanimity, and how it ensnares the soul in a web of worldly pursuits. He further laments the restlessness of the mind, its constant flitting from one object to another in a vain search for fulfillment, comparing it to a sieve that can never be filled with water. Rama's discourse reveals a deep understanding of the human predicament, not just as a detached observer but as a participant in the drama of life. His dispassion is not a theoretical construct but a lived reality, born out of a sincere and heartfelt engagement with the world and its inherent limitations. His questions are a testament to his spiritual maturity, expressing a yearning for liberation, a desire to break free from the shackles of ignorance and suffering, and to discover a state of lasting peace and bliss. The second part, on the behavior of the seeker, begins with Vasistha affirming Rama's wisdom. He acknowledges that Rama, despite his young age, has already arrived at a profound understanding of existence. Vasistha sees Rama's dispassion as a flaming word of wisdom capable of dispelling the mind's delusion and recognizes him as a seeker ripe for liberation. Vasistha, however, doesn't merely want to praise Rama's intellect, but seeks to confirm his knowledge, solidifying his understanding through a series of stories and teachings. He begins by emphasizing the importance of self-effort, recounting the story of who, despite his self-acquired wisdom, lacked inner peace until it was validated by the enlightened King Janaka. This story serves as a powerful reminder that spiritual progress is not a passive reception of knowledge but an active pursuit, a journey of self-discovery undertaken with persistent effort. Vasistha then delves into the interplay between fate and self-effort, explaining that fate is nothing but the accumulated karma of past lives manifesting in the present. He assures Rama that the present self-effort, if aligned with right understanding and guided by scriptural injunctions, can overcome the limitations imposed by past actions. He encourages Rama to be like Indra, who became king of heaven by self-effort, or who became the creator, and the other deities earned their place through determined actions driven by wisdom. Vasistha then unveils the four gatekeepers to the realm of freedom, emphasizing their role as allies in the seeker's journey. These four qualities, self-control, the spirit of inquiry, contentment, and satsanga, are not mere virtues but active forces that can transform the mind. Self-control is presented as a powerful force that protects the seeker from the onslaught of sense pleasures, enabling him to remain undisturbed even amidst the turbulence of worldly experiences. Vasistha compares the self-controlled person to one who wears the armor that deflects the arrows of sorrow. The spirit of inquiry is likened to a bright light that dispels the darkness of ignorance, revealing the true nature of reality. Vasistha highlights the disastrous consequences of a mind devoid of inquiry, comparing it to a storehouse of sorrow haunted by ghosts of its own making. Contentment is presented as a state of inner peace that arises from the renunciation of craving, making the contented person feel as if he owns the world even while possessing nothing. Satsanga, the company of the wise, is seen as a vital force that nourishes the mind with wisdom, dispelling doubts, and inspiring the seeker to tread the path of truth. Vasistha extols its power, declaring it superior to other forms of religious practice. He assures Rama that by diligently cultivating even one of these four qualities, the other three will naturally manifest within him, attracting the highest wisdom to his heart. He stresses the need to tame the wild elephant of the mind. With the help of these allies, reminding Rama that without them, even gods and demigods are unable to progress on the spiritual path. Vasistha's teachings in this part serve as a guidebook for the seeker, a manual for navigating the treacherous terrain of the spiritual journey. He encourages Rama to abandon fatalism and embrace self-effort, stressing that liberation is attainable through persistent and determined pursuit of self-knowledge. He provides Rama with tools for taming the mind, reminding him that the power to transcend limitations and attain freedom lies within. These first two parts of the Yoga Vasistha lay the foundation for the seeker's journey. The recognition of the world's illusory nature and the suffering inherent in craving and attachment pave the way for a yearning for liberation. The emphasis on self-effort, coupled with the guidance provided by the four gatekeepers to freedom, equips the seeker with the necessary tools and the right attitude for embarking on the path to self-knowledge. Part 3 of the Yoga Vasistha, on creation, delves into the seemingly paradoxical nature of the universe, exploring how this world of diversity arises from the one indivisible consciousness. Vasistha, acknowledging Rama's spiritual maturity and his readiness for deeper teachings, begins by dispelling the misconception that the world exists independent of consciousness. He clarifies that the world, much like the blueness of the sky, is a confusion, an optical illusion, a phantasm, that vanishes upon closer examination. He likens the world to a bracelet of gold, emphasizing that while the world is a temporary manifestation of gold consciousness, it has no independent existence. He uses the analogy of the mirage to drive home the point that the world, though seemingly real, is ultimately an illusion. He stresses that as long as one clings to the notion of the world's reality, liberation remains impossible. Vasistha then introduces the story of a sage born of space to illustrate the nature of a being free from the limitations of karma and embodiment. Akashaja, whose very existence is a testament to the power of pure consciousness, has no past karma, no physical body, and hence no mind. He is a mass of intelligence untouched by the cycle of birth and death. Death, personified, is unable to grasp Akashaja, demonstrating that death itself is ultimately an illusion, a consequence of karmic conditioning, not a fundamental reality. Through Akashaja's story, Vasistha reveals the nature of the Creator, who, like Akashaja, is self-created, a manifestation of pure consciousness. Vasistha explains that the Creator, though seemingly endowed with a body, is essentially formless, his creation being a projection of his thought, an emanation of consciousness. He emphasizes that the materiality of the world is an illusion, a castle in the air, a projection of the mind, not a fundamental reality. Vasistha then delves into the origin of the mind, explaining it as empty nothingness likened to the vast emptiness of space. He emphasizes the mind's role in creating the world, explaining that the mind is the experiencer, the perceived and the source of all objects. He reiterates that the world exists only as a reflection in consciousness, vanishing when the mind subsides. Rama, seeking clarity, inquires about the origin of the mind and how it came into being. Vasistha describes the state of perfect equilibrium that existed before the dawn of creation, a state where only the Supreme Lord, the eternal, unborn, self-effulgent, existed. He explains that this Supreme Being, beyond description and conception, is the source of all creation, a cosmic intelligence from which emerge countless divinities and infinite worlds. He stresses that this Supreme Self can be realized only through wisdom, not through rituals or external practices. He emphasizes the importance of seeking self-knowledge, the direct realization of this self as the only true path to liberation. Vasistha then describes the process of creation, explaining how a vibration arises in the Supreme Being, giving birth to Lord Vishnu, from whom the creator Brahma emerges. Brahma, in turn, begins the task of creating the universe. Vasistha emphasizes that creation is not a transformation of the Supreme Being but an emanation, a projection of its inherent potencies, much like waves arising on the surface of the ocean. He explains that the Creator, out of compassion for the beings he created, instituted centers of pilgrimage and virtues like austerity, charity, and righteous conduct, but these only provide temporary relief from suffering, not ultimate liberation. Vasistha then describes his own creation by Brahma, emphasizing that he was brought into being with a veil of ignorance over his heart, causing him to forget his true nature and experience suffering. Brahma then reveals to Vasistha the true knowledge, dispelling the veil of ignorance and awakening him to his true self. This story serves as a powerful metaphor for the human condition, the journey from ignorance to enlightenment through the grace of the divine. Vasistha explains that in every age, the Creator wills into being sages and kings, the former for the spiritual enlightenment of beings and the latter for maintaining order in the world. He acknowledges the pitfalls of kingship, how kings are often corrupted by the allure of power and pleasure, and emphasizes the role of sages in guiding them towards self-knowledge. He assures Rama that the dispassion that has arisen in his heart is a sign of divine grace and encourages him to continue his pursuit of self-knowledge, promising to reveal the wisdom that was bestowed upon him by Brahma. The rest of Part 3 unfolds through a series of captivating stories, each illuminating a different facet of creation and the illusory nature of the world appearance. The story explores the interplay between the physical and the mental dimensions, the role of desire in shaping reality, and the dream-like nature of creation. The tale reveals the power of mental conditioning, how even a seemingly insignificant entity like a needle can become a source of immense suffering through the force of delusion. The narrative of the great forest serves as a metaphor for the human condition, the mind's relentless pursuit of fleeting pleasures and its futile attempts to escape sorrow. Vasistha skillfully uses parables, metaphors, and analogies to reveal the truth behind the veil of illusion. He encourages Rama to see the world as a long dream, a juggler's trick, a manifestation of the mind, stressing that true liberation lies in the realization of this truth. Part 3 concludes with Vasistha emphasizing that the purpose of all these stories is to awaken Rama to the truth of creation, to enable him to see the world as a reflection of consciousness, not an independent reality. He encourages Rama to abandon the pursuit of the unreal and embrace the pursuit of the self, assuring him that by doing so, he will attain the supreme peace that lies beyond the world of appearances. Part 4 of the Yoga Vasistha, on existence, delves deeper into the nature of reality, exploring the persistence of the world appearance despite its inherent unreality. Vasistha, recognizing Rama's growing understanding, emphasizes that while the world appears to be real, it is ultimately sustained only by delusion. He uses vivid imagery, likening the world to a dream vision, a painting on void, and a widespread fog that vanishes upon closer examination. Rama, grappling with the seeming paradox of the world's existence despite its unreality, questions the common belief that the universe exists in a seed state within the Supreme Being during cosmic dissolution, only to re-emerge at the dawn of the next creation cycle. Vasistha refutes this notion, arguing that the concept of a seed is applicable only to material objects, not to the Supreme Being which is beyond the realm of form and name. He stresses that attributing such material characteristics to the formless Brahman is pure foolishness, a product of the mind's tendency to cling to the familiar and tangible. He elucidates that Brahman, the absolute reality, is not a cause in the conventional sense. It does not create the world as a separate entity. Rather, the world is a reflection, an appearance within Brahman, much like waves arising on the surface of the ocean. He uses the analogy of a bracelet of gold again, highlighting that the world has no independent existence apart from gold Brahman. Vasistha explains that the world appearance arises from memory, a memory that seemingly persists even after the cosmic dissolution. However, he argues that this memory itself is unfounded, a fictitious residue of a past that has ceased to be. He reminds Rama that even the gods of the previous world cycle, including the creator Brahma, had attained liberation, making the notion of a persisting memory untenable. The world, therefore, is a spontaneous appearance within the infinite consciousness, a castle in the air, the projection of a memory that has no valid basis. To illustrate the mind's power to create and sustain the world appearance, Vasistha narrates the story of Dara, son of the sage Bhrigu, who becomes infatuated with a celestial nymph and through the sheer force of his desire, ascends to heaven. He forgets his earthly identity, enjoys celestial pleasures for a period equivalent to 8 world cycles, and upon the exhaustion of his merit, falls back to earth along with the nymph. This fall marks the beginning of Dara's long and arduous journey through countless embodiments. He experiences life as a boy, a king, a fisherman, a swan, and many other forms, enduring joys and sorrows, clinging to desires, and repeatedly slipping into the cycle of birth and death. Vasistha highlights how Dara's mind, even in a seemingly advanced state of asceticism, conjures up visions and memories of past lives, binding him to the wheel of samsara. His story serves as a powerful reminder of how the mind, even when seemingly turned away from the world, can create its own illusions, perpetuating the cycle of suffering. The story takes a dramatic turn when Bhrigu, after 100 years of intense penance, discovers the seemingly lifeless body of his son. Overcome by grief and anger, he decides to curse time, personified as Yama, the god of death. Yama, however, calmly confronts Bhrigu, challenging his wisdom and revealing the truth of Dara's journey. He explains that he is not dead but has simply transitioned to another embodiment, experiencing the consequences of his past actions. Yama's discourse too is a central teaching in Part 4. He emphasizes the illusory nature of the physical body, highlighting the mind's role in creating it. He reminds that mental actions alone are actions its thoughts cause bondage, and its own pure state is liberation, stressing that the body is merely a puppet manipulated by the strings of the mind. Yama reveals Dara's journey through numerous embodiments, detailing his experiences as a king, a yogi, a celestial, and various other forms, culminating in his present life as Vasudeva, an ascetic engaged in penance. He encourages to abandon his anger and embrace the truth, reminding him that the self is not bound by the limitations of the physical body. Yama then takes on a journey to witness Dara's present life as Vasudeva. They traverse diverse realms, observing the joys and sorrows of countless beings, experiencing the vastness and the diversity of creation. This journey serves as a powerful metaphor for the soul's journey through samsara, its encounters with different realms of existence, and its eventual return to the source. Upon reaching Vasudeva, Yama awakens him to the memory of his past lives, prompting him to recognize the illusory nature of his identification with the body. Vasudeva, upon realizing the truth, expresses a profound dispassion, acknowledging the futility of clinging to a decaying body and embracing the eternal nature of the self. He then, at Yama's suggestion, abandons the body of Vasudeva and re-enters the decayed body of Dara, which is instantly revived by Dara's yogic power. Father and son are reunited, both shining with the radiance of self-knowledge, demonstrating how liberation transcends the limitations of birth and death. The story serves as a powerful illustration of the mind's power to create and sustain the world appearance, highlighting the interplay between desire, karma, and rebirth. It emphasizes that liberation is not attained by escaping the world or the body, but by recognizing the illusory nature of one's identification with them. Vasistha, through a series of additional stories and teachings in Part 4, further elaborates on the nature of the world, the self, and liberation. He reiterates the mind's power to shape reality, highlighting how the king Lavana, through the magic of a juggler, experiences a lifetime as a primitive tribesman, demonstrating the mind's ability to create and experience even the most fantastic realities. He narrates the tale of the demoness, revealing how even the most fearsome entities can attain liberation through self-knowledge. He emphasizes the importance of self-effort, reminding Rama that wherever and however this consciousness conceives the order, so does it become. Vasistha uses the metaphor of a great forest to represent the world, depicting the mind as a lost traveler wandering through its treacherous paths, seeking peace but finding only sorrow. He emphasizes the need for self-inquiry, likening it to a light that reveals the true nature of the forest, dispelling the darkness of ignorance and delusion. He further explores the 7 steps of ignorance and the 7 steps of wisdom, emphasizing the seeker's journey from delusion to enlightenment. He highlights the importance of the 4 gatekeepers to liberation, reiterating their role in guiding the seeker towards the supreme state. Part 4 culminates with Vasistha's description of the liberated sage, a being who, despite dwelling in the world, is untouched by its allurements. He is like the sky or space which is totally free from being tainted by anything that happens within it. Unmoved by pleasure and pain, existing in a state of perfect equanimity, he is a beacon of wisdom, a testament to the power of self-knowledge to transcend the limitations of the world and attain ultimate freedom. Part 5 of the Yoga Vasistha, titled On Dissolution, shifts its focus from the creation and existence of the world to its ultimate dissolution, both on a cosmic scale and in the individual experience of enlightenment. Vasistha, recognizing Rama's increasing grasp of the teachings, begins by emphasizing the transient nature of the world appearance, likening it to a superstructure sustained by the pillars of ignorance and delusion. He reminds Rama that this seemingly solid edifice can be easily abandoned by those who have attained a pure nature, shedding it effortlessly like a snake shedding its skin. He reiterates the importance of self-inquiry, urging Rama to diligently investigate the nature of truth and falsehood, stressing that true knowledge arises only from direct perception, not from blind faith or intellectual understanding. He encourages Rama to recognize the impermanent nature of the world, reminding him that that which was not in the beginning and which will cease to be after a time, how can that be regarded as truth? Vasistha then beautifully articulates the essence of liberation, describing it as a state where the mind rests in the eternal self, unshaken by the waves of change and free from the delusion of duality. He likens the liberated mind to particles of sand floating in water that settle down when the water is absolutely steady. He emphasizes that once this knowledge of truth is gained, it is never lost, shining forth with unwavering clarity, even if temporarily obscured by the dust of ignorance. He further emphasizes the distinction between the body and the self, reiterating that the self is not confined to the limitations of the physical form. He compares the self to the sky, untouched by the dust particles floating within it, and to a nugget of gold, remaining unblemished even when fallen into mud. He stresses that pleasure and pain, the dualities that torment the embodied being, belong to the realm of ignorance, not to the self which transcends them. Vasistha then unveils a powerful vision of the liberated being, a being who lives in the world yet is not of the world, free from the fetters of craving and aversion, resting in the peace and bliss of the self. He describes this state as one where the mind is free from all mental perversions and from the blinding taint of illusion content with what comes unsought, existing in a state of effortless being. This state, however, is not a passive withdrawal from life, but an active embrace of existence, a state where the liberated one lives and functions in this world, while remaining inwardly detached, performing actions without attachment to their fruits, existing in a state of non-volitional activity. To illustrate the attainment of liberation, Vasistha narrates the captivating story of King Janaka, a renowned ruler who, despite possessing worldly power and prosperity, is troubled by the existential questions of life and death. He is haunted by the transience of worldly pleasures, the relentless force of time, and the suffering inherent in the cycle of birth and death. Janaka's inner turmoil culminates in a profound realization of the world's illusory nature, prompted by the teachings of perfected sages. He recognizes the futility of clinging to transient phenomena, seeing the world as a nightmare from which he desperately seeks to awaken. He contemplates the nature of time, its deceptive tricks, and its power to destroy even the mightiest of beings. He sees the world as a potter's wheel constantly revolving, creating and destroying forms, leaving nothing untouched by its relentless force. He questions the meaning of relationships, recognizing them as fleeting connections forged in the crucible of impermanence. Janaka's dispassion is not a passive resignation, but an active yearning for liberation. He seeks a state of peace and equanimity, a state where his mind is unshaken by the turbulent waves of worldly experience. He resolves to abandon all cravings, to slay this thief the mind who has stolen my wisdom, and to seek self-knowledge. This shift in Janaka's consciousness marks a turning point in his journey. He begins to perform his royal duties without attachment, existing in a state of deep sleep, even while wide awake. He abandons the pursuit of pleasure, resting in the contentment of the self, seeing the world as a juggler's trick from which he has been freed. His dispassion deepens, leading him to a state of desirelessness where he neither longs for what he lacks nor fears losing what he possesses. He realizes that true happiness lies not in external acquisitions, but in the inner peace of the self. This realization culminates in Janaka's attainment of or liberation while living. He becomes a being who, though still embodied, has transcended the limitations of the physical form, existing in a state of perfect equanimity and blissful awareness. Janaka's story serves as a powerful illustration of the transformative power of self-knowledge. He demonstrates that liberation is not attained by escaping the world or by renouncing action, but by changing one's inner attitude, by realizing the truth of one's own being, and by performing actions with detachment and equanimity. Vasistha emphasizes that Janaka's enlightenment, though seemingly sudden, was the culmination of a long journey of self-effort and purification. He reminds Rama that self-knowledge or knowledge of truth is not had by resorting to a guru preceptor, nor by the study of scripture, nor by good works. It is attained only by means of inquiry, inspired by the company of wise and holy men. He encourages Rama to emulate Janaka's example, to engage in persistent self-inquiry, to cultivate dispassion, and to seek the company of the wise. He assures Rama that by doing so, he will eventually attain the same state of unconditioned vision, where the world appears as a dream and the self shines forth with unwavering clarity. Part 5 of the Yoga Vasistha is not merely a treatise on cosmic dissolution, but a guidebook for the seeker, a roadmap for navigating the journey from ignorance to enlightenment. Through Janaka's story and other teachings, Vasistha reveals the transformative power of self-knowledge, emphasizing that liberation is attainable not through external means, but through a radical shift in consciousness, a realization of the self as the ultimate reality. Part 6 of the Yoga Vasistha, on liberation, marks the culmination of Rama's journey towards self-realization. Vasistha, recognizing Rama's readiness to embrace the ultimate truth, unveils the nature of liberation, emphasizing its accessibility to all regardless of their background or past actions. He reiterates that liberation is not a distant goal to be achieved, but an ever-present reality obscured by the veil of ignorance. He begins by reminding Rama that the world appearance, though seemingly solid and real, is essentially a projection of the mind, a net woven with words that entraps the unsuspecting seeker in a web of delusion. He urges Rama to utilize this very net to tie down the bird of his mind, enabling it to rest in the heart, the sacred abode of the self. Vasistha stresses that liberation is not a passive state of inactivity, but an active and dynamic engagement with life. It is a state where one performs actions without attachment to their fruits, existing in a state of effortless being, doing what is appropriate or right in every situation. As it reaches you, he assures Rama that this state of non-volitional activity is the essence of all scriptural teachings, the key to living a liberated life while still dwelling in the world. He reinforces the non-dual nature of reality, proclaiming that the one infinite absolute existence or truth or cosmic consciousness alone is untouched by the limitations of time, space, and duality. He reminds Rama that there is no mind, no ignorance, no individual soul, separate from this infinite consciousness. These are merely concepts, transient projections of the mind, that dissolve upon the realization of the self. Vasistha further emphasizes that the illusory notion of a separate self, the I that experiences bondage and seeks liberation, is a product of ignorance. It's a misconception arising from the mind's misguided identification with the body and the world. He encourages Rama to abandon this false notion, to be free of the ego sense, or the sense of I, and rejoice in the self, recognizing the self as the one reality that shines forth in all beings. He explains that the world appearance, the seemingly endless cycle of creation and dissolution, is sustained by the interplay of ignorance and action. However, for those who have attained self-knowledge, this cycle ceases. They are liberated, not because the world ceases to exist, but because their perception of it is profoundly transformed. They see the world as a reflection of the self, a play of consciousness, not a separate reality to which they are bound. Vasistha then proceeds to unveil the nature of liberation through a series of captivating stories, each revealing a different path to the supreme state. These stories are not mere narratives but profound teachings, skillfully woven to illustrate the subtle truths of existence and the transformative power of self-knowledge. The story of Vishtha, this narrative focuses on the sage and his quest for liberation from the cycle of birth and death. Vishtha, driven by a desire to experience the ultimate reality, engages in intense austerities, seeking to find the most secluded spot in the universe where he can meditate without distraction. He eventually creates a hermitage in outer space within his own mind, a realm seemingly free from the disturbances of the world. However, even in this perfect solitude, is not free from the pull of or mental conditioning. He encounters a celestial woman who, longing for his company, reveals the existence of a world within a rock, a universe as vast and diverse as the one he seeks to escape. The woman, bound by destiny to live within the heart of this rock, is tormented by unfulfilled desires and longs for liberation. She implores to awaken her and her husband, the creator of that world, to the truth of their being. Vishtha, accompanying the woman into the rock, discovers a world teeming with life, complete with its own heaven and hell, gods and demons, mountains and oceans, all existing within the confines of the rock. The creator of this world, upon being awakened, reveals his own realization of the self as pure consciousness, explaining that his creation, including his wife, is but a notion, a projection of his mind. He declares his desire to dissolve his creation and merge back into the infinite consciousness. Vishtha's story highlights the omnipresence of or illusion, demonstrating how the mind, even when seemingly detached from the world, can create its own realities and perpetuate the cycle of suffering. It emphasizes the need for vigilant self-inquiry, a constant investigation into the nature of the self and the world, as the only true path to liberation. It also underscores the illusory nature of distinctions, revealing that even a seemingly solid and inert object like a rock can contain an entire universe within its heart. The story of Suragu. This tale centers around Suragu, a wise and just king who becomes troubled by the burdens of his responsibility. He feels distressed by the thought that his actions, both of blessing and punishing his subjects, will inevitably create karmic consequences for him. Seeking to overcome this sense of duality and attain equanimity, he approaches the sage for guidance. The sage advises Suragu to seek self-knowledge, explaining that the mind's anxieties can be dispelled only through the realization of the self's true nature. He emphasizes the importance of renouncing all cravings and attachments, reminding Suragu that when you turn completely away from the pursuit of pleasure, then you attain to the supreme state through the means of inquiry. Suragu, inspired by the sage's teachings, embarks on a journey of self-inquiry. He systematically examines and discards all the notions that create a sense of separation and limitation, realizing that he is neither his body, his kingdom, nor his relationships. He ultimately arrives at the understanding that the whole world is nothing but the diverse manifestation of consciousness and attains a state of equanimity where he is no longer disturbed by the duality of pleasure and pain, reward and punishment. Suragu's story demonstrates that liberation can be attained even while fulfilling one's worldly duties. It highlights the transformative power of self-knowledge, revealing how the realization of the self's true nature can dissolve the anxieties and limitations created by the ego and lead to a state of peace and equanimity. The story of Riva. This narrative focuses on Riva, a man who loses his parents at a young age and, overwhelmed by grief, seeks solace in an ascetic life. He performs severe austerities, offering his own flesh into the sacrificial fire, and obtains a boon from the fire god, attaining the ability to live on a treetop. He chooses a majestic Kadamba tree as his abode and, while dwelling there, engages in the mental performance of Vedic rituals, purifying his mind and attaining wisdom. One day he encounters a forest deity who, longing for a son, seeks Riva's blessings. Riva, granting her wish, becomes a father. The story continues as Riva instructs his son in the nature of reality, using the parable of King Katta. Katta, a powerful ruler who exists in a realm of pure consciousness, builds an imaginary city within his own mind, populating it with various beings and experiences. This city represents the individual being, the microcosm that reflects the macrocosm of the universe. Katta, however, eventually realizes the illusory nature of his creation and attains liberation, demonstrating that even the most seemingly real and substantial experiences are ultimately products of the mind. Riva's story highlights the transformative power of both austerity and knowledge, emphasizing how they can purify the mind and lead to spiritual unfoldment. It also reveals the subtle play of consciousness, how even those who have transcended the world can be drawn back into its embrace through the power of compassion and the interconnectedness of all beings. The story further emphasizes the power of the mind to shape reality, demonstrating how our thoughts and beliefs create the world we experience. The story of Nam. This tale centers around Nam, a demon king who desires to create invincible warriors free from the limitations of ego and conditioning. He magically creates 3 demons who are omniscient and full of dispassion, seeing the universe as no more valuable than a blade of grass. These demons initially prove invincible in battle against the gods. However, their continued engagement in warfare, fueled by their newfound sense of I, eventually gives rise to egotism and desire within them. They become attached to their bodies and their lives, experiencing fear and fleeing from battle. The gods, recognizing this shift, seize the opportunity and defeat the demons, sending them into a downward spiral of suffering and rebirth. The story concludes with their eventual rebirth as fish in a lake, a stark contrast to their former glory. The tale highlights the importance of maintaining a state of non-attachment and egolessness, even amidst the turbulence of worldly activity. It serves as a potent reminder that the ego, the sense of I, is the root of all suffering and bondage, demonstrating how even the most powerful beings can be brought down by the delusion of a separate self. The story of King Lavana, this narrative, recounted in Part 3, is revisited by Vasistha in Part 6 to emphasize the mind's power to create and sustain even the most elaborate illusions. Lavana, a wise and learned king, encounters a magician who, through a simple trick, transports him into a hallucinatory world where he experiences a lifetime as a primitive tribesman. Lavana, caught in the magician's web, forgets his true identity and fully embraces his new reality, living through years of hardship, joy, and sorrow as a member of the tribe. He eventually dies in this hallucinatory world and awakens back in his court, realizing the illusory nature of his experience. The magician then vanishes, leaving Lavana to ponder the power of, or cosmic illusion. This story serves as a potent reminder that the world we experience, much like Lavana's hallucination, is ultimately a product of the mind, a construct that vanishes upon the realization of the self. The story of King Jim. This narrative focuses on the King Jim, who, despite being righteous and virtuous, is overwhelmed by grief at the death of his parents. His brother, however, remains unmoved by the loss, demonstrating a profound understanding of the transient nature of life and the illusory nature of attachments. Brother tries to console Jim, reminding him that they have both experienced countless births and deaths, and that their current relationship as brothers is but a temporary manifestation in the eternal flow of existence. He encourages to abandon his grief and embrace the truth of the self, realizing that there is no true separation or loss in the unity of consciousness. Brother's wisdom, however, initially fails to penetrate Jim's grief-stricken mind. He clings to his sorrow, unable to let go of his attachment to his parents. This highlights the powerful grip of delusion, demonstrating how even when presented with the truth, the mind can remain bound by its own preconceptions and emotional conditioning. Jim eventually, through his brother's patient guidance and his own reflection, awakens to the truth, He realizes the illusory nature of his grief and attains a state of peace, demonstrating that liberation is attainable through the dispelling of ignorance and the realization of the self's eternal and unchanging nature. The story of Bali, this narrative, also explored in Part 5, is revisited by Vasistha to highlight the transformative power of dispassion and self-knowledge. Bali, the demon king, driven by a desire for ultimate liberation, seeks the guidance of his father Virokana. Virokana reveals that the key to liberation lies in conquering the mind by attaining a state of complete freedom from desire. Bali, inspired by his father's teachings, embarks on a journey of self-inquiry and through persistent effort attains a state of desirelessness, realizing the self as the one reality. He is then tested by Lord Vishnu, who, in the form of a dwarf, tricks Bali into giving away his kingdom. Despite this seemingly significant loss, Bali remains unmoved, demonstrating his unshakable equanimity. He has attained true liberation, a state that transcends the fluctuations of fortune and misfortune, existing in a state of perfect peace and contentment regardless of external circumstances. Bali's story emphasizes that true liberation lies not in possessing or achieving anything in the world, but in realizing the self's true nature as the source of all happiness and fulfillment. The story of Prahlada. This narrative centers around a demon prince renowned for his unwavering devotion to Lord Vishnu. Prahlada, despite his demonic lineage, embodies divine qualities, remaining steadfast in his devotion even when persecuted by his father, the demon king. Prahlada's story, a popular tale in Hindu mythology, is presented here as an example of how true devotion can lead to liberation. Prahlada, through his unflinching faith and love for Vishnu, transcends the limitations of his birth and attains self-knowledge, demonstrating that the path to liberation is open to all, regardless of their background or past actions. He further undergoes a profound inner transformation, realizing his own identity as Vishnu, chanting, "I am who can be my enemy." This radical shift in consciousness highlights the non-dual nature of reality, demonstrating that the devotee, through his love and surrender, ultimately merges with the object of his devotion, becoming one with the divine. The story of Arjuna, this narrative, the central theme of the Bhagavad Gita, is woven into the Yoga Vasistha to emphasize the importance of selfless action and the liberating power of surrendering to the divine will. Arjuna, a valiant warrior, faces a moral dilemma on the battlefield, overwhelmed by the prospect of fighting against his own kin. Lord Krishna, appearing as Arjuna's charioteer, instructs him in the nature of the self, the world, and the path to liberation. He reveals that the self is eternal and unchanging, untouched by the actions of the body and the mind. He emphasizes the importance of performing one's duty without attachment to the fruits of action, surrendering all actions to the divine will. Krishna's teachings awaken Arjuna to the truth of his being, empowering him to transcend his doubts and engage in selfless action, free from the bondage of ego and desire. His story serves as a powerful reminder that true liberation lies not in renouncing action, but in performing actions with a pure heart, surrendering all results to the divine will. The story of the 100 Rudras, this tale, a complex and multi-layered narrative, illustrates the illusory nature of the world and the mind's power to create and sustain its own realities. A mendicant, tired of meditation, fancies himself as a tribesman, setting in motion a series of transformations through countless embodiments. He experiences life as a king, a celestial nymph, a deer, a creeper, a bee, an elephant, and many other forms, repeatedly caught in the cycle of birth and death. Eventually, he is reborn as Rudra, the god of dissolution, and remembers his entire journey. He realizes that his various forms and experiences were nothing but a dream, a projection of his own mind. He then awakens all the beings he had imagined, revealing their true nature as pure consciousness and guiding them towards liberation. This story emphasizes the dreamlike nature of creation, highlighting how the mind, through its thoughts and desires, constructs its own reality and perpetuates the cycle of suffering. It also reveals the liberating power of self-knowledge, demonstrating how the realization of the self's true nature can dissolve the illusions created by the mind and lead to ultimate freedom. The story of Kundadanta, this narrative focuses on Kundadanta, who seeks the secret to liberation. he encounters an ascetic engaged in intense penance, seeking to become emperor of the world. The ascetic, through his austerities, obtains a boon from the gods, achieving his desire and becoming a powerful ruler. However, this boon proves to be a mixed blessing. The ascetic, upon returning to his family, discovers that his 7 brothers had also sought similar boons, all becoming rulers of the earth simultaneously. This creates a paradox, prompting Kundadanta to seek clarification from a wise sage. The sage reveals that the 8 brothers, despite residing in their own homes, are indeed ruling the earth, each experiencing his own universe within his own consciousness. He explains that the world, like a dream, is ultimately a projection of the mind, and that each being experiences his own unique reality based on his own thoughts and desires. Kundadanta's story highlights the subjective nature of reality, demonstrating how the mind creates its own world and experiences it as real. It also emphasizes the illusory nature of limitations, revealing that even seemingly contradictory experiences can coexist in the infinite expanse of consciousness. Other stories and parables, in addition to these elaborate narratives, Part 6 is rich with shorter stories and parables, each serving to illuminate a specific aspect of liberation. The story of the wood apple Vasistha likens the infinite consciousness to a wood apple fruit indestructible and eternal, the source of all joys and delights. The story of the rock he compares Brahman to a rock solid and unchanging, yet containing within it countless potentialities, symbolized by lotuses that blossom and fade. The story of the philosopher's stone this parable illustrates how the pursuit of something lesser can lead to the attainment of something greater, just as a miser seeking a lost copper coin stumbles upon a precious jewel. The story of the foolish elephant this story warns against complacency and the dangers of clinging to a false sense of freedom. Each of these stories serves as a potent reminder of the illusory nature of the world appearance and the liberating power of realizing the self's true nature. Vasistha concludes Part 6 by emphasizing the importance of realizing the truth through direct experience. He encourages Rama to embrace the teachings of the scripture, to seek the company of the wise, to cultivate dispassion, and to engage in persistent self-inquiry, assuring him that by doing so, he will attain the unconditioned vision, where the world appears as a dream and the self shines forth with unwavering clarity. The Yoga Vasistha, through its intricate tapestry of stories and teachings, provides a comprehensive guide for the seeker, revealing the nature of reality, the pitfalls of ignorance, and the path to ultimate liberation. It encourages introspection, self-inquiry, and the cultivation of wisdom, emphasizing the transformative power of self-knowledge to dispel the delusion of duality and realize the self as the one infinite consciousness. It is a call to awaken from the dream of separation and realize the unity of all things in the boundless ocean of Brahman.